The bus behind us stopped so suddenly that its headlights dipped toward the pavement. Every conversation on our bus died at once. I remember because I was already looking through the rear window, not at the road, at the people inside that bus. Every single passenger was staring at us. No one looked out a side window, no one looked at a phone, no one talked. They simply faced forward, their eyes fixed on our bus as if they'd been waiting for us to notice. Then our driver muttered something under his breath and pressed the accelerator. The other bus pulled away at exactly the same moment. This is Tales of the Dark. Our senior class trip was supposed to be the best week of the year. There were 32 students, 3 teachers, and our driver, Mr. Lewis, who had been driving school trips for nearly 20 years. We were headed to the mountains for 4 days. The trip would take almost 7 hours. For the first few hours, everything felt normal. People traded seats. Someone brought a speaker until the teachers told him to turn it off. A card game started in the back. A few students slept. Around noon, clouds rolled across the highway, turning the sunlight grey. That's when I first noticed the second bus. It looked almost identical to ours. Same size, same faded white paint, same style of windows. Even from a distance, something about it felt oddly familiar. I pointed it out to my friend Mason. Looks like another school trip. He leaned over my seat. I don't see any school name on it. Neither did I. Our bus had the district's name painted across the side. The one behind us had nothing, just blank white metal. No logo, no numbers, nothing. It stayed behind us for nearly 40 minutes. Not passing, not falling behind, just matching our speed. Eventually, we pulled into a roadside service station. Everyone climbed off to stretch. I glanced toward the highway. The second bus was gone. I figured it had continued without stopping. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it was only the beginning. About an hour later, we were back on the road. Rain had started falling, nothing heavy, just enough to blur the windows. I happened to look back again. The bus was there, same distance, same lane. Mason laughed. Guess they took the same stop. Maybe. Except this service station had only one exit. Our driver had parked where every vehicle leaving would have passed us. No one remembered seeing another bus. At dinner that evening, I mentioned it to Mr. Lewis. He frowned. What bus? The white one. I haven't seen another coach since lunch. I've been watching it for hours. He shook his head. You kids spend too much time looking at ghost stories online. I laughed with everyone else, but I knew what I'd seen. After dark, the rain became heavier. Most students were asleep. Only a handful of us were awake. The highway stretched empty beneath our headlights. I checked the rear window again. The bus was still there. Its headlights never changed distance. It didn't drift. It didn't overtake us. It simply followed. I counted the windows. 12 on each side, exactly like ours. Then lightning flashed. For less than a second, the inside of the other bus lit up. Every seat was occupied. Not one passenger moved, not one. I couldn't explain why that bothered me so much. People fall asleep on long trips. But even sleeping passengers shift. Lean, scratch their faces, turn toward the window. These people looked frozen. I pressed my forehead against the glass. Another flash of lightning. This time I could make out faces. Adults, teenagers, children mixed together. No luggage, no backpacks. Just rows of people sitting perfectly upright. Watching, I pulled out my phone and tried taking a picture. The camera focused on raindrops. Nothing behind us looked clear. Mason woke up when I nudged him. What? Look. He squinted through the glass. I can't really see anything. The bus. Oh, he stared for several seconds. That's creepy. What is? They're all looking this way. Neither of us said another word. The next rest stop appeared just before midnight. The teachers announced a 15-minute break. Everyone piled out. I stayed near the back of our bus, waiting. If the second bus stopped too, I'd finally get a closer look. Its headlights approached. Closer, closer. Then without slowing down, it drove straight past the service station entrance. I watched until its taillights disappeared into the rain. See. Mason said, just another bus. Maybe he was right. 15 minutes later, we returned to the highway. Less than 10 minutes after leaving the stop, headlights appeared behind us again. The same distance, the same bus. I stared at the clock above the windshield. There was no way. The highway had been completely straight. There were no exits, no side roads, nothing. It should have been miles ahead of us. Instead, it was behind us again, exactly where it had always been. This time, even Mr. Lewis noticed. I saw him glance repeatedly into the large mirror above his seat. His shoulders stiffened. One of the teachers walked forward. "Everything okay?" He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said quietly, "That bus, what about it? It's been behind us all night." The teacher looked through the windshield mirror. "I don't see anything unusual." Mr. Lewis didn't reply. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. Around 1 in the morning, the rain finally stopped. The sky cleared enough for moonlight to spill across the highway. The bus behind us was closer now, much closer, close enough that I could finally read the destination board above its windshield. Except there wasn't a destination. There was only one word glowing in pale amber letters: return. Nobody else seemed to notice it. I rubbed my eyes, looked again. The sign was blank, just empty black glass. Maybe I was tired, maybe I imagined it. Then the bus moved into the passing lane for the first time all day. It slowly pulled alongside us. Every student still faced forward, every face turned toward our windows. And as it drew level with my seat, I realized every passenger on that bus was wearing our school's uniform. The moment I realized every passenger on the other bus was wearing our school's uniform, my stomach dropped. Not a similar uniform. Ours, the same navy blazer. The same grey sweater, the same crest stitched over the left pocket. I stood so quickly my shoulder slammed into the luggage rack. Mason grabbed my arm. "What? Look at them." He leaned toward the window. For a second, he didn't say anything. Then he whispered, "Why are they all looking at us?" The buses stayed side by side for several seconds. Nobody on the other bus waved, nobody spoke. They simply stared. Their expressions were empty, not angry, not frightened, just waiting. Then, without warning, their driver accelerated. The white bus pulled ahead. Its taillights disappeared into the darkness. A collective sigh spread through our bus. Even students who hadn't been paying attention could feel something had changed. Mr. Lewis drove in complete silence. One of the teachers finally walked to the front. "Should we call someone?" "I don't even know what I'd tell them," Mr. Lewis replied quietly. "That another bus passed us. The rest of the night was uneventful. No headlights, no white bus." By sunrise, most of us had convinced ourselves we'd imagined the whole thing. Sleep deprivation, rain, too much excitement. That explanation lasted until breakfast. Our hotel sat beside a lake surrounded by pine-covered hills. After checking in, everyone gathered in the dining hall. Mr. Carter, our history teacher, began taking attendance. He called every name, everyone answered, then he frowned. "There are 33. A few students laughed. "There are 32 students." He counted again, 33. He checked the printed roster, 32 names. He counted the room again, 33 people. "Who hasn't been marked?" Nobody spoke. He started over, calling each name individually. Every student answered exactly once. Still 33. Finally, he shrugged. "I counted wrong, but I noticed something." No matter how many times I looked around the room, I could never figure out who the extra person was. Later that afternoon, we visited a historic fort. Students split into small groups. Teachers reminded everyone to stay together. While we explored one of the old stone hallways, Mason nudged me. "The bus." I turned, parked beyond the entrance gates, the same blank white coach. No markings, no passengers visible through the windshield, no driver. It shouldn't have been there. The parking area had only one entrance. Security had been directing every vehicle all morning. None of us had seen it arrive. We told Mr. Carter. He followed us outside. The parking space was empty. "There," Mason pointed. It was right there. The teacher looked confused. "I think you two need some sleep." That evening, rain rolled in again. The teachers cancelled the outdoor activities. Most of us stayed in the hotel lounge playing cards. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. It contained one sentence: "Wrong bus." I showed Mason. He laughed nervously. "Someone's messing with you." I tried calling the number. It wasn't in service. I deleted the message. Less than a minute later, the same message appeared again: "Wrong bus." This time the sender field was blank. No number, no contact, just the words. I didn't tell anyone else. That night I barely slept. Around 3 in the morning, I looked out my hotel window. The parking lot was almost empty, except for one vehicle, a white coach bus, parked beneath the only streetlight. Its engine wasn't running, its lights were off. But I could see silhouettes sitting perfectly still inside, watching the hotel. I pulled the curtain shut. When I looked again 30 seconds later, the parking space was empty. The next morning, everyone wanted to go home. Even the teachers seemed unusually tense. They cut the trip short. Nobody complained. By noon, we were back on our bus heading toward the highway. For several hours, nothing happened. Then Mr. Lewis suddenly slowed. He stared ahead through the windshield. "That's impossible." The highway split into 2 identical roads. One curved left, the other curved right. Each had the same signs, the same mile marker, the same exit number. The GPS froze. Both roads appeared on the screen. Neither teacher remembered seeing 2 highways during the trip in. Traffic continued normally. Cars chose one side or the other without hesitation. Mr. Lewis pulled onto the shoulder. "What do we do?" one teacher asked. Nobody answered. Then in the distance, the white bus appeared. It stopped at the fork. Its indicator flashed once, left, then it drove away. Mr. Lewis gripped the steering wheel. "I'm not following that thing." He turned right. For the first 20 minutes, everything seemed normal. Then Mason looked out the window. "We've already passed that gas station." I looked up. He was right. The same blue sign, the same broken fence, the same abandoned barn. We passed them again and again, every 20 minutes. The fuel gauge dropped lower. Nobody spoke anymore. Students stared silently out the windows. Finally, Mr. Lewis made the decision. He pulled onto the shoulder, reversed the bus, and drove back toward the fork. It was gone. There was only one highway now, the one leading home, no split. No second road, nothing. We arrived back at school just after sunset. Parents were already waiting. People hugged, laughed, collected luggage. Everyone wanted to forget the trip. A week later, the principal held an assembly. He thanked Mr. Lewis for getting everyone home safely. Then he smiled. "I'm especially glad all 32 students returned safely." I looked around the auditorium. 31 students sat in the seats around me. I counted twice. Mason wasn't there. Neither was his backpack. Neither was his jacket. I asked everyone where he was. They looked confused. "Who's Mason?" I showed them old photos from my phone. Every picture from the trip had changed. The seat beside mine was empty. Every group photo had one gap where someone should have been. His contact had disappeared from my phone. Every text thread was gone. His name wasn't in the yearbook. It wasn't on the class roster. The only thing left was a blurry photo I'd taken through the rain-covered rear window on the first night. You could barely make out the passengers on the white bus, but if you zoomed in far enough, one face became clear. Mason was sitting in the very last row, looking directly at me through the glass, as if he'd been riding that bus the entire time. If you are brave enough to hear more nightmares, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, and if you have your own terrifying experience, leave it in the comments or send your story by email. Maybe your nightmare will become the next story told here.